Okay, I think we can just start the webinar. Welcome everybody. Thank you for participating in this BIAN webinar, BIAN in the era of open banking, to redefine the open banking ecosystem. Just some ground rules for this webinar. Everybody participating, please keep your mute on. Keep your camera off if you like, because we record this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them via the chat, and I will ask them in your behalf to the presenter. And if you ask me a question, I can follow up to that later on. And at the end of this session, we have a Q&A. Yeah. I'm your moderator, Maurits van der Plas, responsible director of Van Haren Learning Solutions. My colleague Rolf van Veldhoven, he's also helping me out as a moderator to let everybody into the session at this moment. So thank you for that, Rolf. Then regarding the webinar agenda, again, you can ask us questions via the chat. Some obstructing news before we move on. So sadly enough, our keynote from PNC last minute had to cancel for our webinar today. So that's a pity, also because she was a very strong presenter. She still does want to participate in this webinar or at a webinar. So she will do so next month. Next month we have another webinar planned in this session, and she will participate there. Because it was so last minute, we didn't manage to find a replacement for her. Luckily, or what's an upside, is that in this search for a replacement, we did find many more suitable case studies for upcoming webinars. But sadly enough, at such a short notice, we couldn't find anybody else. Luckily, Udai from CCNC Solutions, they have prepared a case study, which they made providing training the last couple of months. So they will present this instead. So you still have some premium content that will be presented to you today, which is actually used in live trainings. So I hope that this is still adds some value and is a slight compensation. Once again, so the 20th of May, we'll have probably Heather and maybe other presenters also participate. For this webinar, first here a quick introduction, then Vish will share about the BIAN ecosystem and success factors for BIAN implementation. Then Udai will go a bit more into the BIAN adoption journey, and afterwards share the sample case study. And then we'll have a Q&A, and the next event will be the 20th of May. After this webinar, we'll share with you the recording. You also will also ask you for feedback, and we also share with you the BIAN 2019 ebook. If you have more questions, feel free to mail our marketing, and also would like to recommend you to visit the BIAN practitioner community, which is hosted by BIAN, and there's a lot of helpful information, such as a certified professional repository, frequently asked questions. You can also ask questions there, and they will be answered by BIAN experts or by the community, and there's much more information there. Also, for those who received an email earlier, probably was Murphy's Law, there went something wrong, so a few people got an email twice regarding the invite. Sorry for that also. But now we're ready, and we can get going with the webinar. First up, what is BIAN? For those who don't know, BIAN is the Banking Industry Architecture Network, a collaborative not-for-profit ecosystem formed by leading banks and technology providers and consultancies and academics all over the globe. The goal of BIAN is to create and establish, promote, provide a common framework for banking interoperability, and to become recognized as a world-class reference point for interoperability in the banking industry. Then who are members of BIAN? Here's a quick overview of current BIAN financial institutions that are members of BIAN. Outside the financial institutions, these are also members and partners of BIAN, so consultancy firms and technology providers and much more. And then we also have BIAN academic and standard bodies and training partners, such as CCNC Solutions and Envision, CCNC solution, which will participate now. These are accredited training organization and it can assist you with training. Then indeed I already give a quick introduction. So who are we and who is CCNC Solutions? So we, Van Haren Learning Solutions, Van Haren are the certification provider for BIAN. We do the execution of the BIAN certification, and our sister organization Van Haren is the publisher of BIAN. So that's our role, and we act in that behalf. And CCNC Solutions is a world-recognized accredited training organization, also in BIAN. You will hear more of them later on. And then now I will give the mic to Vish.
Thanks, Maurice. I hope everybody can hear me. This is Vish. The full name is Vishwanathan, and I live in Australia. As you know, my name sounds like somebody from India. I migrated about 40 years back. And when I came to Australia, I realized that in this part of the world, we can't pronounce any long names. So I cut my name short to Vish, V-I-S-H. That's stuck now. So please call me Vish. Okay, now who are we? Our company is called 3Cs. The 3Cs stand for connectivity, communication, and collaboration. In any relationship, whether it's human relationship or a system relationship, we first connect, then communicate, and hopefully we can collaborate. That's our objective. So we have lots of specialists and experts in architecture. Our core competence is architecture. So we live and breathe architecture, and we have a consulting and training team in different parts of the world. And we have some prestigious customers like HSBC. Right now, we're conducting training courses all over the world. We have many banks, insurance companies, many in the financial institutions. So we have a lot of Fortune 500 customers who we have trained, upgraded the skills, provide certification, as well as hold their hands till they get their act together. In this whole conversation, we'll be talking about architecture, enterprise architecture or solution architecture. That's something which the organizations have to do. As you know, you cannot outsource it completely lock, stock, and barrel. Organizations like banks and insurance companies and health organizations, they take control of their own architecture, but they can use external organizations like us on a spot basis. So we don't presume that we will take over the entire setup, because it's for the organization to do that. We fit in the middle space between strategy and execution. The strategy is being decided by many times by some big four consultants like McKinsey and others. There are lots of project organizations. Who's handling the middle space? That means how do you connect strategy to execution? That's mostly left to the end user organizations. Many times they don't have the resources, they don't have the time, because they are in the banking business and insurance business or government business. They are not in the business of looking at architecture per se. So we fit into the space. We actually help companies start architecture practice. Next slide. So let's step back for a moment and think about what we are talking about. Today's banking ecosystem, the digital ecosystem, is not confined to a bank like we know it before. A brick and mortar place where moms and dads can come and do some personal business with the bank managers is very different. It's moving towards a lot of things are digitized. And the banking system itself is not confined to the bank. It's an extended enterprise, which consists of primarily the customer ecosystem, as you see on the left-hand side, and the partner ecosystem. So I'd like to introduce here, like we said, 3 Cs about our companies, the 5 Cs in the banking system. The most important C is, of course, the customer. The customers are becoming more knowledgeable, they're demanding more and more, they're increasing, their expectations are increasing day by day. Second C is collaborators or partners. The partners, there are traditional partners like the card companies and lending companies and others, but there are new partners for banks like the mobile companies, which provide mobile wallets, mobile payments. Then there are cryptocurrencies creeping in. There are a lot of crowdfunding companies. So the organizations we call as partners, the partners themselves are expanding into several new areas. So in this complex ecosystem, comprised of the bank, the customer ecosystem, and the partner ecosystem. It's not just a place you visit to do a bank and or just doing online banking. It's much more than that. Digital banking is today about how banks can embed their own capabilities, the bank's own capabilities, into the customer ecosystem as well as into the partner ecosystem. It's about working with partners and customers in a seamless way. That's why the things like BIAN, the Banking Industry Architecture Network, is extremely significant in today's banking digital ecosystem. There are a few questions. What are the challenges to the banks? The first challenge is, are they able to provide services in a way that can be easily consumed by the customers, and also managed by the partners? Are the banks ready for initiatives like open banking, which we'll be talking about a lot in this presentation? Are they seeing compliance? For example, a lot of compliance coming from regulatory authorities in every country. Are they seeing compliance as a nuisance, or it's actually a new opportunity for innovation? Can the bank give up its direct customer relationship because they don't have everything is through these online systems, and outsource everything as service? How do you balance the traditional banking of the personal banking with digital banking? So these are the challenges. Next one. So we talk about BIAN. Simplistically, the Banking Industry Architecture Network can be thought of as a move from core banking to core-less banking. Many of us in this presentation webinar, we actually, those from the banking industry, have been used to core banking. The banks have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes $1 billion on core banking systems. Over in 90s and early 2000, banks have spent lots of money in developing their own core banking system from scratch. What's the difference between core banking and core-less banking? Core banking is mostly in-house and firewalled. Core-less banking is widely distributed and in fact boundary-less. There is no boundary for that. Core banking is monolithic, large, unwieldy, many times made up of static and fixed connections. But core-less banking is made up of dynamic connections and relationships. Core banking is difficult to change, and many times banks are embedded in the old legacy technology, and they're very difficult to change or integrate. The idea of core-less banking is it should be very easy to integrate. It's component-based, so easy to integrate, easy to change. And core banking is made up of a lot of point-to-point connections. Over the years, we found that several point-to-point technologies have been developed. You connect something to something, something to something. At the end of the day, it looks like a series of cross connections. But in a core-less banking, it's a seamless connection of elements, almost like a neural network. Lastly, to summarize, the core banking from our perspective has been like an architecture by accident. It was never planned. They buy a few products, new systems develop, they buy some packages, they integrate something, connect a lot of point to point, and from point to point, it becomes an architecture just by accident. From that, the core-less banking, we want to move into architecture by design. So the whole journey, if you think about it, is moving from architecture by accident to architecture by design. In that context, we think of these 4 layers. Okay. In the top layer is a business ecosystem, which consists of business capabilities, business processes, and is banking industry specific. That's where BIAN contributes the most. The next layer below that is what we call the digital ecosystem. There are components and services, and these are again banking related. So these service elements are also provided by BIAN. The third layer, which is like what we call the digital ecosystem, is more like a cross-industry layer. It's not specific to banks. In that layer, from top, if you come to the top, the third layer, actually you can think of a lot of cross-industry services. For example, Microsoft Teams is a service. Confluence is a service. Salesforce is a service. AWS, Azure, etc. are cloud services. So these are horizontal services which fit into the third layer. So the top 2 layers, which are banking specific and provided by mostly by BIAN, make use of the services in the third layer. The last one is infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure is today has become like plumbing. It's commodity. What we need is high bandwidth, high connectivity, high performance, high availability, high reliability, high resilience networks. So that is given. So if you think of these 4 layers, the BIAN components have to work with these bottom 2 layers, but provide a lot of components which can be readily used for the top 2 layers. Next slide. So again, if the organization decided they want to implement BIAN, as you know, from my perspective, BIAN is never implemented. It's gradually included in the organization because every organization has got some kind of architecture. What we're trying to do is move towards an open component-based architecture. So it's a gradual process. Unless it's a greenfield, there are a lot of greenfield banks starting up. They can, of course, implement the components-based architecture from day one. But in a typical traditional bank, which is existing for the last 50, 100 years, it is going to be a gradual evolution of the architecture, as I said, from core banking kind of architecture to coreless banking made of components. So in that journey, what are the 3 critical factors that are needed? Number 1 is the framework. The framework is on the top, and it has to be industry standard. It has to be open framework. You can click once more, Maris. So what the second part is actually the process involved in evolution of the architecture. We actually think of 4 processes. How does the actual architecture evolve? While evolving, we need to have a proper change management, and also it has to be governed by a high level governance. And last one is measurement or metrics. The evolution process, change management process, governance process, and measurement process. These are the 4 processes which are actually embedded into this whole architecture journey. But having a framework is not the only thing that's needed. You need something to actually to add proper notation and a tool set. There are many tools available which are compatible with BIAN and compatible with the notation that we'll introduce later. And of course, don't forget the most important part, which is the structure and people. And the people have to be knowledgeable. Not only knowledgeable, they have to be certified. So what's the necessity for certification? The certification gives you assurance, whether it's a supplier of the services or the receiver of services, they are assured that the people who are certified have got a certain amount of knowledge and they can be hired with confidence. So it reduces the risk in implementations. Next slide. Sorry, just click once more. Okay, so in this context, we are talking about 3 things. What is the framework we are talking about in this context for today's BIAN? The modeling notation is one of the notations which is very appropriate for architecture is Archimate. The Archimate is the modeling notation, and certified tool which is certified both for BIAN and for Archimate. So these are the tool sets, and one of the such tool is BizDesign. On the left hand side, you can see the BIAN certified architects. So that's where we are leading to. The important people element is provided by certified architects. That's where certification fits in. Next one. So how does certification help? We actually look at it from 3 perspectives. The first is actually a banking professional perspective. So the banking professionals, first of all, it gives a global recognition for knowledge and competence. It's portable certification. So actually you can move from one location to another location and still actually the certification is useful. The second one is the most important one from my perspective is provides a professional pride, self-confidence and morale. What happens when people get certified in BIAN, they exhibit it to the LinkedIn site and they brag about it, that we can't forget that part of the morale boosting aspect of it. Of course, it provides career opportunities, global career opportunities, and it enhances visibility among the peers, industry peers who are certified. They look at each other and then and exchange knowledge. So that is so certification is very useful from a banking professional perspective. Next slide. How does the bank certification help banks themselves? Banks and financial institutions The BIAN, actually knowing BIAN very well and being certified and being competent helps them to fast track the digital journey. When the bank is involved in a digital transformation journey, it's good to have certified architects who think in the same way, who are on the same page, who understand the same terminology to fast track implementations. Of course, it should include improve solution efficiency. The design of solutions and developments are based on BIAN components. Everybody follows the same kind of patterns, and you get the, of course, you should get the design and development time should be much less. It's future proofing. As many vendors follow BIAN and get certified for BIAN. By the way, BIAN has two kinds of certifications at this moment. One is people certification. That's what mainly we are talking about. The people are certified for BIAN's competency. The second one is product certification. Products and solutions in the banking industry also get certified saying they're compatible with BIAN. So organizations, banks will be able to select the right products in the RFI and RFP stage. When they're selecting products, they will be able to be assured that the products work together, they're interoperable if they select the BIAN certified components. It provides opportunities for open collaboration with other partners, not only other banks, but also with other service providers and solution providers. It offers capabilities for providing enhanced customer experience because most of the solutions coming from BIAN, they actually deal with customer experience side of things. And of course, it provides opportunities for innovation. So from a end user or banking perspective, financial institution perspective, following BIAN and open architecture has got a lot of benefits. And of course, certification assures that you are dealing with the selecting the right people and the right products. Next one. So how does BIAN certification help vendors? I already covered that in a way. There are many kinds of vendors. There are consultants, there are solution providers, the system integrators, wherever they're coming from. If they are providing banking solutions and services to banking customers, they can offer products that comply with the open international standard. Obviously, that should improve marketability of products and their visibility among global customers in a global market. It must enhance sales competitiveness as compared to other proprietary products. It must integrate readily with other solution components because in the banking industry or like any other industry, no one solution or product provides a complete solution. There are payment products, there are security products, there are identity products, there are retail banking products, wealth management products. They have to interoperate together because most banks provide different kinds of solutions, and depending on the type of solution, they may go to a different vendor. So if they want to, if these vendor solutions and hardware and software have to interoperate and work together, it's better they follow a single standard, an open standard. Of course, I want to repeat myself saying that it opens up opportunities for vendors for a global banking market. Currently, in our company, we have trained customers from US, Europe, Africa, Asia, South America. There are requests coming from everywhere. So if you are a banking solution provider or product provider, it helps you to go beyond the borders to a global market. Next one. So in this journey, I think my colleague Uday will cover this in more detail. BIAN organization, there are a lot of working groups. There are working groups dealing with many subject matter. For example, there's a payment working group. We are very active in two working groups. One is called the adoption working group, dealing with making BIAN more easily adoptable in the adopted in the market. And the other one is certification working group, which deals with people certification and product certification. In the adoption working group, they created a complete what's called as infographics. On the left-hand side, you can see stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, up to stage 6. It's a simple infographics. If an organization is willing to, are ready to go on a journey, BIAN, what do they do? Of course, the very first thing, logically, they have to evaluate BIAN. They have to be aware of BIAN, they have to attend training courses, get certified, and evaluate is BIAN suitable for them. Once they decide, yes, it is suitable, then they actually, most cases, they build a pilot. Why? Because the banking systems are very complex. You can't they say you can't eat an elephant in one stroke. You have to eat in small bites. So what they do is they look at which is going to give them the fastest benefit in the shortest time. It could be a pain point, it could be a business pain point, or it could be a particular business unit that is absolutely need this kind of facility, or it could be new area. For example, a banking is entering into a wealth management area. That's a good time to introduce BIAN. So you have to select the right one and have a pilot. And once they build a business case for the pilot based on pilots is generally about 3 to 6 months. In 3 to 6 months, you show value, a quick win for the organization. So once you decide what the pilot is and have a clear plan for the pilot, you can execute the pilot. What does the pilot do? It's a proof of concept as well as a learning exercise. The people involved in the pilot not only create something, but also they learn a lot during this process by dirtying their hands. It's a hands-on exercise. And then the company may decide to adopt BIAN. That's the stage 4. And once they decide to adopt BIAN, then they have to go through a series of setup of processes, and the organization structure has to be set up correctly, and the architecture practice within the organization has to be set up. In this, we always talk about a combination of insider and outsider combination. We have been involved in this kind of architecture exercise for over 20 years. And most of the time we find that, of course, the architecture practice cannot be outsourced. You can't completely outsource lock, stock and barrel to a company and saying, take care of my architecture. That's not possible because the architecture is very close to the organization. Every organization has different types of architecture. It's very different. Even if you are in the banking area, architecture of one bank is different from another bank. So it cannot be outsourced. At the same time, you cannot do it yourself. Most banks find that they need different kinds of skills, from strategic skills to implementation skills to integration skills to project management skills, service management skills, lots of skills require all the way. So many times they depend on outside organizations as a partner. So what we found mostly is that a combination of insider and outsider combination is the best one for ensuring success. So that is the kind of a journey that has been mapped by the adoption working group. And what we are just showing today is some example of what kind of services are available from an organization like us or others in this whole journey. On the x-axis, you can see there should be some workshops initially at certain stages to establish either to evaluate BIAN or to find out your readiness for BIAN or find out your maturity, the organization maturity. There are various kinds of workshops. At the pilot stage and adoption stage also, there could be some involvement. Then certification, that's where it fits in. Certification, we're talking about people certification bits in this area where it is nice to have everyone involved in this exercise, whether it's the core architecture team or the others who are touching architecture to be certified. So they're all speak the same language, they're on the same page, they work together as a team, there's collaboration. And there could be other workshops. And so this shows, and there could be some consultancies which are required, spot consultancies which may be needed from the external organization, or you could need some resources, the short-term resources. Okay, for example, you need a security expert for a few weeks. So these are the possibilities. So my colleague now, Uday Bhatt, who is a experienced enterprise architect and BIAN architect, will explain this journey in a bit more detail, and hopefully we'll also give you some couple of use cases. Thank you.
Yeah, Uday, are you there?
Hello, good day all. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are here. But also to everyone, just an update. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask in the chat, and I can ask in your behalf to Uday or after in the Q&A to Vish. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, mic's to you, Uday. Thanks.
So this is a journey. So moving to the next slide. If you see on the left-hand side, it is talking in terms of stages. And the stages appears to be something like a quantum jump. Let me try to share some of the artifacts, and instead of giving a quantum feeling, can we have some analog feeling over there in this adoption journey and make life little smooth? So that's the whole purpose for this particular webinar. Moving to the next slide. if you see in the first stage itself, why we need BIAN, what is the gap analysis, and what is the value proposition. These are the three very pertinent questions. And for doing that, moving to the next slide, it totally depends upon the business owner or the business decision maker, could be CT or CXO. What are your most important factor which is challenging you due to the changing market, due to this pandemic, or due to any issue or the behavior changes of the human transaction? Is it application to application, business to business, business to C, or deployment agility, or any operational complexity, maintainability, or there could be many things. There could be a centralized versus decentralized decision making. So there are multiple dimensions over there for this particular transaction and banking business, and something must be hitting the whole, either bottom line or the top line. So based on those important factors, we want to move ahead and try to have some pilot of the case. So moving to the next slide, we go for the pilot case. Now, if we go in the pilot case, you see in between there is something called stakeholder, then there's an opportunity, and there is some goal. Although it sounds very easy, but it has a complexity involved in it, and some process needs to be maintained to find out all the three steps. So let's see how it is going to work. So moving to the next, and this slide is having multiple transition. So this is a process 9 steps. First is the select reference model, viewpoint, and tool. The reference model here is the BIAN service landscape. Viewpoint, we will discuss it. Develop baseline, what is there existing. Develop target, that in pilot what we are going to achieve by using BIAN. And we try to create some architectural definition document, complete plan, so that we can implement in the pilot. So moving to the next slide, it will take 2 clicks. This is the reference model. So this is a, you can say, index list of all the service domains developed, created, maintained, identified by an organization. It has business area, referred as reference data, sales service, operations, risk compliance, and business support. It has business domains, something like marketing, loan and deposit, cards, etc. And all the small non-visible ones are the service domain, which represents the business capability in its elemental level. Now, once we got this reference, and based on the scope of pilot, we might have identified certain service domains. So this whole bunch might reduce to a set. So moving to the next slide. So once we show that, so in this democratic world, when we are working in a geographically spread organization, we have to take inputs even before taking any decision with the different stakeholders. So this is an output of a stakeholder analysis heat map. Only the stakeholder names are sanitized based on the use cases, what we want to work in the pilot case, which is going to be covered into functionality, which are total number of 25. And we try to understand what are the different stakeholders, that means different department heads, has a view. Some are expecting something, some are latent, and some are not that sure. So that is not coming up. So then moving to the next slide, now we know how all the stakeholders are feeling about this pilot. So out of that complete service landscape, on the left-hand side, which is represented in blue, green, and yellow, it's a small chunk of service domains, business domain, and service domain, which we have chosen for the pilot. And then we did 3 steps: filter, specialize, and organize. And if you see on the right-hand side, these are different views. The left top view represents the cost and efficiency, which hits to the CTO. Right-hand side is transformational IT. It is mostly for the CTO. Then below that, it is a strategic role, which is for the CEO or CIO or the board members. And the left-hand side is centralized and decentralized, which is going to give a view to the operations head, how the whole business operation for that particular pilot is going to be. So moving to the next slide. So this is the first step completed. Now this is a gap analysis with the existing, because we are doing pilot. So when we are doing the pilot, we try to create a gap analysis. So this is a heat map on the service domains, and the green ones, it's good to go. Red ones are not that compliant. Little yellow and green are somewhat compliant, and white one we have not considered because it is out of scope. So this is one of the way for doing, you can say, portfolio analysis for service domains based on existing baseline system. Now moving to the next slide. Let us suppose we are going to work with a payment service domain. So if you see in gray boxes, they are product fulfillment, payment engine that represents the core. And on top, it is laid down the service domains identified and creating a complete solution for it. So this is some a completed solution for a pilot case. Now moving to the next.
Yeah, Yudai, can I ask a
Yeah,
question in between? Is that
yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah,
So I got a question here from Roger.
yeah,
As an industry standard,
yeah,
being BIAN compliant, it seems to reach an end on the service domain identification and some architecture elements like functional patterns, generic artifacts, behavior qualifier types, and assets.
yeah.
As it presents itself to be implementation agnostic, further levels of specifications are only presented for reference, control records, attributes, behavior qualifiers, business objective models and scenarios, and APIs. Is it
Yeah.
correct? Sorry, I tried to read the question here. Is it correct my apprehension of it as a standard and all of its diagrams and tools support only usage? Not sure if it makes any sense when I ask this
No, no.
question.
Let me try to answer. For a particular service domain, there are asset type, there are functional patterns, control records, behavior qualifiers, then action terms, service operations. So functional patterns, there are 19 functional patterns which are fixed and standardized by BIAN. There are 17 action terms which are already fixed. And all are represented on the BIAN website, on the portal, in a meta model format in terms of uh, uh, Archimedes notation. So far as the business object model and control records are concerned, they are also represented in terms of entity relationship diagram with all the cardinality in place. But those, all the details for a particular service domain is good to understand. But if somebody, so there are two scenarios to it. If somebody is just doing a palette on a vanilla without doing any gap analysis, which I am referring to. So you can have that particular API from the uh, BIAN website, or you can use the Swagger test suite which they are providing it, and try to implement with a little bit of mapping with your business object model and entities what you have, and try to test and simulate some business process between the interaction of APIs. So that those all details are at an implementation level. But this is true only for 185 service domains. Having said that, there are 420 plus service domains, and it is even increasing. So for those service domains where all these details are not there, the group is working, or even certain people who are interested in, they can select a service domain and try. And based on the historical fact and detail, the way BIAN is uh, doing it, one can develop, put it as a candidate, then after whole uh, definition, it will termed as defined, and then it will be organized and put into the service domain or the portal for the sharing of other people. I hope I was able to
Yeah.
understand and give some explanation to the question.
Thank you, Pirai. Perfect.
So moving to the next slide, I think time is pretty less. So I will move a little faster. These are the, you can say it is a breakup of service operation. And service operations are mainly broken into four categories called origination, invocation, delegation, and reporting. And these are standard names used in all service domains. And those are associated with features. So features are written over there. Now, based on the features, if my existing system, so if I have a system one, system two, system three, they are supporting features, they are not supporting features, or they are requiring some level of customization, this type of Excel sheet or tool-based analysis can be done. And further extending this particular analysis, so moving to the next slide, uh, we are going to come up with red, green, and amber, red, green, and amber or yellow kind of, say, data, which gives a indicative idea how the pilot roadmap be. So all the green ones can be carried forward to your target architecture. The amber one can be carried forward to the target architecture with little bit of customization, and red ones are those which can be either decommissioned or cannot be considered at all for this particular pilot implementation. So moving to the next. So this is one that is feature based, and this is the same kind of analysis based on component, but it is based on risk and benefit, because risk of implementation we know, and what are the different benefits we are going to get, which is a different view of from the CIO, CTO, or CFO perspective. And that's how, because business priorities will always be different than the technical priorities. So the first one is giving you technical priority, and this is giving you business priority, and this is going to proceed while implementation of the pilot. Now moving to the next slide. Now, after developing the pilot, so we got the complete plan of the pilot, and we have taken a decision what we are going to do it or not do it. So now we will execute or deploy it. So let's see. Moving to the next one. So we will try to do, because we are working with the core, so this is a tier 2 layout. So whether we are using with third-party bank applications, third-party application or mobile or bank application over the internet, we use the API gateway, which is interacting with some kind of ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, maybe MuleSoft, Dell Boomi, or Fusion middleware, and which is in turn talking to the core systems, which are slightly rationalized. So if you don't see on the right-hand side a big chunk of core platform, it is slightly rationalized. So these are modularized core system so that we can have a pilot in place. And we will see in our case study what do we mean by this also. Now moving to the next slide. So how we are going to adopt in an organization. So next slide, please. We can have this kind of, we can have roadmap developed based on portfolio or whatever slide we have covered so far. We have to take care of security and compliance. We have to have strategies for deployment, and we have to aspire for coreless. So in coreless banking, we adopt from direct to core, wrapped host, and ultimately we go to macro service and enter into the coreless banking. Now moving to the next slide. Next slide. Now this is a complete integrated framework which any organization can use, which will support devs, DevOps, DevSecOps, agility, and continuous integration and continuous deployment. On left-hand side, that is, as you can say, strategic section in which all your business area, business domain, and service domains, and the backlog, which was not given, has been consolidated, planned for whatever we have discussed. Once all those API service domain has been identified and the business object model with data model got streamlined, aliases being done, then that will pass over to the right-hand side where those APIs will be deployed on container or maybe on-premise. That is totally a choice. And it will have all the source control, defect control, feedback, and all those stuff. And then that API can be used as a API catalog. So I used one word, we simulate the business process. That means all APIs can be deployed and then we try to use the choreography by the container based on the demand, and the demand will be documented in terms of business scenario and we fulfill it. And if you are using the cloud, then metering and other thing will come into picture. If you are using on-premise, then it will be just choreography. And then moving to the last right-hand side, it is going on a production where end users are doing it. And end users, whatever the feedback they will give, it will go into the respective towers so that things can be improved upon. So this is a complete integrated framework to support CI/CD and your agility. Now moving to the next slide. When we are using this particular framework, we also need some level of computation of matrices. Obviously, there are 65 plus matrices, but I have just used a very basic one, which is very common. Everybody knows that. So cost variance is compliance, schedule variance, effort variance, because effort and cost is the most important for the top management. Schedule is important for the project and PMO. Risk compliance is also top management. So that's how we are going to measure. Now moving to the next one. Now we are talking that sample case study when we are saying in that particular journey what we are going to do. So this is all about consumer loan. So moving to the next slide, uh, consumer loan right now, let us suppose in this case, is assumed to be a core legacy platform. If we want to get BIAN aligned, and because we cannot challenge all the stakeholders, okay, in one way you go to the coreless. So what we are going to do, we will do some sort of legacy realignment, and we choose the APIs from BIAN and map with the business object model and the entities available. And we also try to find out what are the service domains or functionality which is beyond our scope, like credit rating. Credit rating is done by TransUnion or some other company, not by the bank. Bank might be doing it, but for their internal purposes. But officially, it is something different. And nowadays, even eKYC is totally different. So all those things we will find it out. And moving to the next slide, this is a schematic representation of, you can say, externalization. So in left-hand side, if you see, it is a consumer loan legacy application in which customer transactions, workflow, service utility, and all these things are there. But there is a slight benefit over here because these are rationalized or modularized legacy system. Maybe in reality, you may not get the similar kind of stuff, but then you can realign. So if you see all the blue ones, except the consumer loan fulfillment, they are all moved out from the legacy and called service domain, which are externalized. Now moving to the next one. These are the externalized service domains. So let me move the next one. So this is just a sample. So the question which was asked to me, this is the evidence for it. So I have, instead of having 12, I have just taken one sample, you can say meta model. So this is a consumer loan meta model. Archimate notation is done. So service operations are there and all the functional patterns, asset type, behavior qualifier, everything is defined on top of it. And left-hand side, there are three gray boxes. One gives you control record, second one gives you business object model, third one direct you to the API. If API is not available, then it won't be a link. Then moving to the next one. Now, this is the thing what somebody has to do. once somebody identifies a service domain and he goes and reads, he come to know that one service domain has multiple inputs and multiple outputs, and that is not available on the website. So an architect has to create. So if it is a consumer loan, the input is coming from, say, customer loan, account recovery, session dialogue, payment execution, and regulatory compliances. And then it has to go out. So it will give an output to position keeping, that means balancing the account, financial accounting, payment order, and blah, blah. So somebody knows how the whole system is, what is the input and what is the output and what is going to be the flow. Now moving to the next one. Now these are some samples. There are total 11 scenarios, but there are just 3 scenarios depicted over here. Whenever I talk scenario, I always say, when we talk in terms of process can be developed, coded, or implemented. When I talk in terms of business scenario, whatever English may be, but I always use the word, we simulate the process. You always need to understand, when the COVID pandemic happened, till now the scientists are just working with the organic compound of the periodic table only, and they are trying to create a medicine for it. They have not devised anything apart from 137, more than 137 element, which is not available in the periodic table. So similarly, this your BIAN service landscape is works like a periodic table. Once you identify all these service domains, by doing the message exchange, depending upon the business scenario, you simulate the business process, what is going to be required by the business. Now moving to the next one. Now this is the business object model for consumer loan. And this business model has already identified entities and elements and the cardinalities. Challenges is in the last slide, which will make you clear what will be the challenges we are going to face. So the next slide represents the control record. So control record is also a number of entities with all the cardinalities involved. So this you can also get it from the BIAN portal. But here your only high-level design ends. Your real problem starts from here. Moving to the next one. This is just a, you can say, Swagger screenshot for the consumer API, where you can get a very standard JSON or API for this particular consumer lens service domain, which you can download. But now the whole problem here starts, that whatever the data is given over here is the dummy data. So the challenge is, so the last slide, which is the challenge, moving to the next one. I think we can move to the last one, challenges one. This is fine. One more. So challenge is semantic API will serve as a reference API. So during implementation journey, for all the needs specific to bank, we need to introduce the right sub-qualifiers. Somebody says aliasing, somebody say, you can say metadata or meta model, depending upon who uses what. In my country, we normally use aliasing, but we need to use all the right sub-qualifiers in the service operation so that they can be discrete, non-overlapping, rightly mirror the bank context. Because your existing bank context may not be uh, aligned with the business object model. So this is a huge work for the, you can say, data architect who are going to use the BIAN for this. Apart from that, because it is the whole standard is evolving, so we need to keep track a process so that our all the deployment, pilot, or actual implementation are aligned with the BIAN and its changing versions. So synchronization and releases should be well defined, and so that there is no impact in your timelines. And we also incorporate the BIAN updates. Now, what the slide I have skipped, it was nothing but it is just a, you can say, cloud deployment from the core by using the ESP. So that's I think that will be very easy to be interpreted. So I think it's already almost the time. So if we can take some questions on it.
Yeah, thank you, Juraj. Great presentation. Thank you also for sharing the case study. Also very knowledgeable. I'm not sure if there's any question and answers so far from anyone. Please feel free to reach out. Oh, I had one question, but I already asked it to Juraj. So it is now the 1 hour has passed. Just to yeah, here's, let's say, to repeat. The 20th of May, we have another webinar where Heather from PNC will be participating, and hopefully also other participants. If somebody has a question, feel free to ask via the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to read.
I have a question here from Diogo. Can you give a brief overview on the process and requirements for vendor product certification? I think that's for you, maybe Vish.
Don't know. I think the vendor asking about the vendor product certification.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. As far as I know, the vendor product certification is in the product working, the certification working group is working on it. They haven't finalized it, unless Uday has got some latest news on that.
Actually, for the product certification, they are following the, you can say, continuous maturity model representation. So they have already identified the parameters for it, and it is under review. So it's not like that whether you are BIAN aligned or not aligned. It's not going to be Boolean. So even if some organization may be using a tier 1 or tier 2 type of implementation, where core system is also there, ESP is also there, and they are using some level of semantic APIs. So at a maturity level, it will be measured and okay, you are BIAN compliant at a maturity level X. So that's how they are planning for the product certification. But right now, it is all about the semantic API and that maturity.
Yeah, perfect. And then a question from Rohan is to, even though you tried, you're welcome, Diego. Even though you tried to skip the last 2 slides, we got the question if we can see the last 2 slides still. So
Yeah. So yeah, so this is the slide. The first one is a generic one, and the next one is a related to the Google Cloud. We can use any of the clouds, so don't assume that I have any love or passion towards the Google Cloud. It just happens to be I prepared this one. So coming to the first one, previous slide.
this one.
Yeah. So if you see below the gray boxes are the core systems. So they are having your core bank, your core loan, consumer loan application over there. Now, some ESP, so mostly the people who are using ESP for BIAN implementation mostly are MuleSoft or AnyPoint. And there they are having some of the host wrappers on the MuleSoft. And on the cloud, on the API container, they are deploying the semantics service domain APIs for this consumer loan, whatever I have identified. Now, the left-hand side, what I was trying to show, that business application can be defined. What I am just trying to say, because in API container, it is just a listing of the service domain names. So just telling, okay, you downloaded the API, tested it, mapped the business object model and deployed over here. And you are totally dependent on the container for the choreography or any kind of, you can say, orchestration. But for after doing this orchestration, if you see this left-hand side, each block is representing a service domain, and they are doing a message exchange, and hence it is they are trying to create or simulate the business process. So by deploying API container is the first step. Now, when I am doing the orchestration or choreography, then I need the business scenario input, and then I will configure accordingly so that whenever the message exchange is happening, it gives me the proper, you can say, simulated business process in terms of business scenario. So now for doing this, some challenges will be there. We have to have an API gateway. We need to white label it. And so right now we can do all this cloud deployment for the service APIs, which are not very strict with the regulatory compliance at a very in a pilot stage. But as and when the compliance and other things are taken care of, then we can move it. I think there is some sound, but I was not able to understand what it is. So this is a deployment. This is a generic deployment. And next one is for the Google Cloud. Whether you use a Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, or any data lake or anything, it's fine. Right now, both the examples are container based only.
Yeah,
So you can.
There's two more questions. One is about the certification for people, and the other one is about the. Can you also help us understand the case for payment segment specialization? Specialty for regulators which are supported by BIAN. Is that? Would you also like to elaborate to that question here?
Payment regulations.
Yeah. So. Can you also help us understand the use case for payment segment, especially for regulators which are supported by BIAN? I'm not sure if that's
regulator parts will be. I think it's nice to reply a little later for this.
Okay, we can come back to you saying via email, then or we will at least. Then regarding the question about people certification. So what also Vish and Uday refer to is that the people certification, that's the BIAN Foundation certification, which is executed by us, Van Hagen Learning Solutions. And you can study for this by studying the book or participating in the training given by several training partners. And when passing the exam, you're BIAN certified. And one of these training partners is also CCNC, that is now giving the training here. And sadly enough, our other participant was not here, but one of the statements he made is that certification is one of the first steps, but it's only 10% of your entire BIAN journey, but it is your first 10%. I'm not sure if I copied that quote correctly, Vish. I'm not sure if you remember how it was given.
That's right. I think certification is the essential first step, because once people are certified, then we can start talking in the same language and same terminology. We know the process. Then once certification is completed, then you go through these various stages of the BIAN journey. Understanding, evaluating BIAN. Even to evaluate BIAN, you need certification. So certification we see is the very basic thing. And right after that, you go through the 7 steps. And during these steps, the people who participate should be ideally only certified architects. Otherwise, there'll be misinterpretation and lack of understanding.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for elaborating. I see. Yeah, I hope that I answered our questions. If there's any more questions, please feel free to ask. If there's no more questions, I think we will leave it at that. I also see people still trying to admin at this moment. Yeah, so I think we can then, unless there's questions coming in, still wrap it up here. Thank you, Vish and Yunai, for. I one other question. Whether is it an online exam? Yes, it is an online exam. After purchasing the exam voucher, you can do the exam online, anywhere at any time. So it's very digital, very efficient, and also part of the exam is also an exam trainer. So when you purchase the exam voucher, also the book is included, and you also get an exam trainer in the exam. So before doing the actual exam, you can train 60 questions. You see your feedback and the answers before you actually go for the exam. And also when you go for a training course, they can include the exam voucher in the training course for the exam. And then another question that I get here, Oh yeah, this is an answer. Um, yeah, no. So another question: is Archimate a prerequisite for the BIAN exam? No, it is not. A chosen modeling language by BIAN is in Archimate. They made this decision, I think, last year. However, it's not a hard requirement, or it's not a requirement to do BIAN or do the BIAN certification. Does it give any added value, Vish? Can you elaborate regarding being Archimate certified or knowing Archimate for the
Yeah,
certification?
because many of these BIAN components are described in Archimate. So what I understand is that basic subset of Archimate is used. So even if you don't know the complete superset of Archimate, still you should know the basic subset to understand it. But when you start implementation, what happens is if you know the complete set of Archimate, it helps because you can actually use it more elaborately. Correct, Uday? What's the difference between knowing Archimate and not knowing Archimate?
Actually, in the course, there is a complete slide which helps people to understand all the Archimate notation from all for all the layers. So that I think facility is there in the BIAN. So it's one single slide, but yes, it helps. But it is with the context with the service domain. So it makes people understand how the notation are being used and does a notation represent.
But if you want to get a complete understanding of Archimate, you must go for a three. We have a 2 to 3 days, 3 days Archimate course. It's a separate certification for Archimate. You can have Archimate certification if you want to actually get a complete understanding of Archimate and appreciation, and then use it in your implementation.
Yeah. Although, would you recommend Fish to first go for Archimate and then for BIAN? I think you can do it. It's not a hard requirement. You can just go
Yeah,
for.
no.
There's no, yeah, preferred first route. I reckon.
Uh,
Correct.
yeah. Actually, there is a very beautiful question. The question is that after certification, how much time you will take to do one, I think, delivery? That's the question.
Yeah.
So it totally depends upon the scope or the use case you have chosen and how open is the organization and how much information you have with your baseline system.
Yeah. I think typically any architecture thing is certification is the first part, but just by passing certification, one doesn't become an architect. So it's a journey for the architect himself or herself. So what happens is the after certification, the best thing is to get involved in a project and get dirty hands, and then gradually learn through the process, and then it's actually a journey. So nobody becomes an architect just after getting certified, but certification is absolutely essential from our perspective. Start the journey. Once you start the journey, yeah, as Uday was saying, some organizations provide a quick opportunity for implementation. Others may not provide. If you're working for a service provider, it depends on who your clients are. So there are many ifs and buts. So but generally, if you're involved in one project, one interesting project over a period of 3 to 6 months, at the end of it, you will get an extremely good knowledge of implementation of BIAN. And companies like us can help you in that as well as the BIAN organization itself is providing lots of white papers, use cases, everything. So one has to have this, what can I say? Not only the certification, but the ability to understand, grasp these things from various perspectives. That's why we said 10, 20, 70. In any learning process, 10% is attending the course and certification. 20% is your own external learning from other sources. 70% is actually working on a project. That's why our company is kind of we call a full service organization. We help organizations not only get certified, but hold their hands in initial stages, in the startup stages, up to the time they become self-sufficient. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for elaborating. Are there any more questions? Again, I still see people coming into the lobby. Um, yeah. Again, any last questions from anyone? We're wrapping up the session. Um, yeah, last time in 20th of May we have another session with speakers from the industry. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you have shared that we can share your details with CCNC, we will. And you can also get in contact with them. After this webinar, we share with you the promised details of the book, also the possibility to get registered for next session. I recommend to visit the BIAN practitioners community, where you can find frequently asked questions and much more resources. Yeah, I think this is it then. Again, Vish, Juraj, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
give it another go in a month time. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good day and also night for you, Vish, and your day. Good
Yeah.
night.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you for.
Thanks.